"You're not aligned with where we're going," she said, pushing the papers away without looking at me. The room was white, silent, just the sound of the clock and a security guard standing at the door. "My name is Ethan Price. I'm 52 years old. Until last week, I was the senior operations manager at West Point Industrial, a mid-sized logistics firm tucked behind the highway in Little Rock, Arkansas. 19 years. No sick leaves longer than 3 days. No complaints. No drama. Just results. I joined the company back when it was still renting a concrete warehouse with rusted signage and paper logs. There was no system, no structure, no safety net, just Wallace and the founder, a man with too many debts and too much grit. I admired that. Maybe that's why I stayed. I started at the bottom: procurement, inventory, maintenance calls. I wasn't handed a title. I earned each one by being the guy who showed up. When the forklifts stopped working, when the orders didn't match, when suppliers went quiet, I handled it. I didn't have a fancy degree, but I had something. They couldn't teach responsibility. Over time, they started depending on me, not just for tasks, for outcomes. I learned to make things run smooth, to read people, to notice problems before they made the reports. I wasn't a hero. I just paid attention. And that, it turns out, is a rare skill. I gave them everything. Missed anniversaries, Emma's school plays, Christmas Eve dinners that ended with me stepping out to take a quick call. My wife used to joke that I was married to 2 people, her and the company. Some weeks it wasn't a joke, but loyalty, that old, dusty word, meant something to me. And for years I thought it meant something to them too. When Wallace sold the company 4 years ago to a private equity group from Boston, I told myself the changes were normal. Strategic restructuring, efficiency reviews, performance audits, corporate lingo that always sounds harmless right before it turns personal. Still, I kept my head down, trained the new hires, covered for mistakes, showed up early, left late. They brought in younger faces. Most of them had clean shoes and clean resumes. They talked in metrics and buzzwords. Didn't matter. I didn't feel threatened. I knew the systems. I knew the clients. I knew which fuse to pull if the conveyor belt jammed mid-shift. But lately, the meetings started happening without me. My name vanished from certain threads. My access permissions began to shift. Nothing obvious, just enough to make you wonder if the lights were starting to dim around you. And then came the invite. The 9:30 a.m. meeting that wasn't on my calendar yesterday. When I first walked through the doors at West Point, the place barely had doors. We were 11 people and a dream, stacking pallets by hand and scribbling delivery logs on clipboards. Wallace ran things like a family, not the polished kind, but the gritty, fight-through-fire kind. He'd show up at 5 a.m., sleeves rolled, checking inventory himself. He used to say, "Numbers lie if you don't watch them close." And I did. I learned everything by doing, not from a textbook, but from oil-stained floors and 18-hour days. We didn't have software. We had trust. In 5 years, we tripled capacity. 10 years in, we were statewide. Every system that scaled, from scheduling routes to renegotiating vendor terms, I had a hand in. Not because it was assigned to me, but because no one else stepped up. And that's the thing. I didn't build West Point alone. But West Point wouldn't be what it is without me. They used to know that. Back when we still knew each other's kids' names. It didn't happen overnight. That's what made it so hard to pin down. First, it was little things. A project I usually led suddenly reassigned. Meetings that used to need my input didn't anymore. Memos went out with my department's name on them, but not my signature. I chalked it up to bad coordination. At least that's what I told myself. Then came Caleb, fresh out of grad school, shiny resume, perfect teeth. They said he'd be supporting my team, but I wasn't blind. He didn't ask questions like someone trying to learn. He asked like someone preparing to take over. I caught him shadowing vendors I'd worked with for years, poking through systems I designed, getting invited into executive huddles I was never told about. One afternoon, I walked into the break room and heard my name. They went quiet the second. I entered. I smiled, grabbed my coffee, walked out. That's when I knew, even Emma noticed. "You're different, Dad," she said over dinner one night. "Just tired," I lied. They stopped copying me on compliance reviews. Caleb started presenting my quarterly numbers. When I flagged a discrepancy in a shipping contract, I was told to focus on higher-level priorities. I'd never been more insulted or more certain. I was being erased, quietly, strategically, like I'd never been there at all. And the worst part? I didn't even recognize the place anymore. The hallway used to buzz with chatter and jokes. Now it felt like a showroom, polished, cold, and lifeless. Everyone walking faster, talking less, afraid to look you in the eye in case you disappeared. Next, I didn't say anything, not yet, because while they were busy replacing me on paper, I was busy remembering everything they'd forgotten. The week after I left, a former supplier texted me, "Why is your replacement asking about discount tiers you negotiated 5 years ago?" I didn't answer. 2 days later, an old Root partner called. Said payment bounced for the first time in years. Still, I stayed quiet. I didn't need to say anything. They were unraveling on their own. The system Caleb had so confidently touched, he didn't realize half of it still ran on scripts I'd written, undocumented, precise, and dependent on sequence. One misstep, and the automated backups stopped syncing. I knew it. They didn't. Not yet. Clients I'd personally nurtured began to pull back. Nothing dramatic. Just delays, doubts, shorter renewals. I watched from my porch with a coffee in hand, getting messages that started with, "Hey, quick question," and ended in silence when they realized I wasn't answering. I wasn't being petty. I was being patient. For once, I wasn't the fixer. I was the ghost in the rearview mirror, the one they didn't know they'd see again. No threats, no notes, just absence. And absence, I've learned, speaks louder than protest. It was a Thursday when the first message came through. A name I hadn't seen in years. Mike Renner. We met once, back at a logistics summit in Dallas. He was new at Goldridge Freight. Back then, sharp, attentive, the type who asked smart questions and actually waited for the answers. "Hey, Ethan," the message read. "Not sure if you remember me. I just took over strategy at Arkland Systems. Been following your work for a while. Got some ideas I'd love to run by you if you're open." I almost deleted it. Felt like another networking formality. But something about the timing. It stuck. We met for coffee the next day. No suits, no pitch deck. Just 2 cups and a spiral notebook filled with sketches, scribbles, and questions that no one at West Point had ever bothered to ask me. "Look," he said after a few minutes, "I won't sugarcoat this. We're growing fast, but our back end is a mess. We're great at sales, terrible at scaling, and we've been watching what's happening at West Point." I raised an eyebrow. "Yeah," he continued. "Word travels. The supplier mishaps, the missed freight transfers, the onboarding delays. I know you're not the kind of guy to gloat, but we both know that didn't happen on your watch." I just nodded. "What we need," he said, "is someone who's built it before. Not in theory. Not in PowerPoint, for real. We want you to build the foundation your way." It wasn't just flattering. It was clarity, and it didn't stop there. That weekend, Arkland's CTO reached out. Then their regional ops director. Each message more direct than the last. Not trying to fill a role, trying to build one around me. Autonomy, leadership, equity, real voice at the table. The kind of offer you don't ignore, unless you're still clinging to old wounds. And maybe I was. Until Monday. That's when the email came in. From West Point, not HR, not Caleb. From Trisha Morgan, the executive VP who hadn't said a single word to me during my final months there. Her message was short, professional, cold. "Hi, Ethan. We're experiencing some transitional gaps post-restructure. Would you consider coming on board in a temporary advisory capacity to help stabilize key operational systems during Q3? No mention of what had happened. No recognition, no ownership. just a convenient reach for the guy they pushed out when he became too expensive. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the email to Mike with a simple note. "They're realizing it now." He replied in 2 minutes. "Let's make sure they remember it." That afternoon, I signed the contract with Arkland Systems. 6-month strategic implementation lead, oversight of infrastructure, complete freedom to choose my team. A fresh start, built on everything they underestimated. Funny how things turn. They fired me for being too loyal, too expensive, too old school. Now I was the exact thing someone else had been looking for, and while West Point struggled to stitch together a broken map, I was already halfway to building a better one. It started with missed shipments. Then came the payroll delay. Vendors began demanding upfront payment, something that had never happened under my watch. Key clients pulled out quietly. No press releases, just quiet contract terminations that hit like bricks once the Q2 reports rolled in. I watched it all unfold from my new desk at Arkland. Glass walls, lean staff, Monday strategy calls that actually meant something. The contrast was almost absurd. By late summer, 2 former coworkers messaged me on Signal. "Caleb's losing control. Nobody knows who's doing what anymore. Client services just lost 4 people in a week." I heard they called in external consultants to audit the systems. It's a mess. I didn't answer. They weren't really looking for me. They were looking for the person who used to keep the fires from spreading. But I'd left the fire extinguisher back. In their office, they chose to toss it out. Now they were learning how fast things burn without it. Then came the legal threats, an email, this time from the company's external counsel. "We've reviewed your post-employment activity. There may be overlap between your current role and confidential information obtained during your tenure." Classic bluff. No grounds, no specifics, just noise. I had been careful. I had records, time-stamped, documented, stored off-site. They wanted to rattle me. Instead, they revealed their panic. Trisha called next, the same VP who hadn't spoken my name in months. Her voice had changed. Quieter, almost respectful. "Ethan, this isn't personal. We just need help. Even short-term support." "The board is nervous," I let her speak. Let her explain the lawsuits, the operational collapse, the executive reshuffling. Let her ask for just a few hours a week, even as a consultant. And when she was done, I said only this: "I'm sorry. I've already committed elsewhere. Hope you find someone." No sarcasm, no satisfaction in my tone. Just finality. Because when they closed that door on me, they had no idea they were walking into a room with no exit. The thing about truth is, it doesn't rush. It waits. Watches. And then, when it hits, it doesn't knock. It breaks the damn door. It was Benji from finance and who reached out first. "You didn't hear this from me," he said, voice low, eyes darting. "But you should know. The board opened an internal review." He forwarded a thread anonymously. Internal. Confidential. Dated 2 weeks before I was let go. The subject. Line read, "Q2 salary optimization and legacy elimination strategy. Final phase." The body was worse. A list. Names, salaries, departmental dependencies. Mine was highlighted. Notes read, "Long tenure, dire influence. High cost. Quiet removal advised. Transition plan. Caleb to shadow under mentorship pre-cut. Avoid documentation requests or exit interviews. Minimize exposure." They'd planned it all. Not because I'd failed, but because I'd cost them more than 3 interns and didn't play the politics. And then came the kicker. Recommend deactivating custom scripts prior to offboarding. No clear documentation available. Ethan can't risk. They knew I built the system. They knew no one else understood it. And instead of bringing me in, they tried to erase me. Fast. But that wasn't the worst part. 2 days later, someone else emailed me from a burner address. It was an audio recording. Poor quality, but unmistakable. Caleb's voice, talking to Trisha. "He's old school. We let him go, someone else picks him up. That's fine. Just make sure nothing he built can tie back to liability. If something breaks, we blame legacy. He's gone. Nobody will care." They wanted to protect themselves, not the company. Not the clients, just their image. They didn't fire me because I was too expensive. They fired me because I knew too much. My hands shook a little after I listened. Not from anger, from clarity. All those late nights, all those extra shifts, the time I stayed through a hurricane to keep the generators running, the weekend I missed Emma's graduation rehearsal because a shipment got rerouted at midnight. It was never about performance. It was never about efficiency. It was about control. But here's the thing. They weren't the only ones keeping records. I had everything. Every line of code. Every system log. Every flagged anomaly. Stored, time-stamped, backed up in encrypted drives they never even knew existed. Not because I planned revenge back then, but because I knew numbers don't lie. People do. I passed everything to my legal team. Not to sue. Not yet. But to protect what was mine. Then I sent one email, just one, to West Point's board. No threats, no accusations, just the subject line. Thought you'd like a second opinion before your next audit? Silence. Then, panic. 2 days later, Tricia resigned. Caleb was placed on administrative leave. An emergency town hall was scheduled, but by then the damage was done. And me? I was finally at peace. Because for the first time in a long time, someone told the truth, and it wasn't me. The first Monday at Arkland felt strange. No security guard watching me pack my things. No passive-aggressive silence from people who used to nod, then look away. Just clean air, a quiet office, and a seat that didn't need to be earned every morning. I kept my head down that first week, so not out of fear but discipline. I listened more than I spoke. I sat in rooms where people asked real questions, not the kind designed to trap you. I wasn't there to prove anything. I'd already done that. I was there to build. Mike, the VP who brought me in, gave me full autonomy to redesign the company's logistics framework. Not just improve it, rethink it from scratch. He said, "We don't want a smarter version of broken. We want something that works, even if it's slower at first. Durable over fast. Real over trendy." It was like hearing oxygen speak. I started small, rebuilt their vendor protocol, retraced all the delivery mapping, implemented layered checkpoints that didn't rely on one person holding it all together. Not even me. Then I did something I never had the authority to do before. I hired with intention. Not just skills on paper. I looked for people who asked why, instead of just saying yes. People who had seen failure and didn't flinch. Emma helped me name the new architecture we were building. She called it Bridge Logic. Said it sounded like something built to connect, not control. She was right. I took calls from old suppliers, ones West Point had burned, and reopened the conversation with just one sentence. "We do things differently here." Some were skeptical. I didn't rush them. Arkland grew slowly, but the foundation held. And people noticed. Not because we made noise, but because we delivered without excuses. By month 4, competitors were asking what system we were using. By month 6, I was asked to speak at a logistics roundtable, the same one I used to attend just to listen in the back. And somewhere in that quiet climb, the respect came back. Not in awards, not in handshakes, in the small things. A 25-year-old analyst stayed late to help clean up a reporting tool. A junior ops lead asked if she could shadow my meeting, said she wanted to learn how I keep people calm under pressure. And one day, walking past the main floor, I heard someone say, "Ask Ethan, he'll know." That was it. No spotlight, no apology from the past, just the slow, steady return of what they tried to take. Not my job, not my salary, but my name. It came on a Tuesday, a calendar invite. Subject: Joint Venture Integration Opportunity, High Level. Sent from Arkland's CEO directly. No middleman, no fluff. I paused before opening it. Deep down, I knew something big was coming. I just didn't expect the twist. They weren't just expanding, they were acquiring. Not West Point, no. That ship had sunk. But 2 regional suppliers who used to work under West Point's distribution wing, and now Arkland needed someone to lead the integration, Someone who understood both sides of the equation. They wanted me. Not just project oversight, Mike explained. We're talking full operational authority. Your team, your strategy, your call on which systems stay and which go. I let that sit for a second. It wasn't just trust. It was power. The kind they never gave me when I was the guy keeping everything from collapsing. Now, I could set the tone, define the terms. Not with revenge in mind, but with structure, with values, with the kind of clarity I wished someone had offered me years ago. I asked for 3 things. No consultants in the first 90 days. We build with what we have, hands-on, no theory. Open door policy, enforced. If anyone gets shut out, I walk, my pick of leadership under me. People who care more about outcomes than optics. They said yes to everything. 1 week later, I was back in a boardroom. Not as a guest, not as a replacement, but as the architect of the next phase. A few familiar faces popped up during early calls. Former partners from the West Point days. People who once replied to my emails with, "We'll circle back." Now they called me sir. I didn't gloat. Didn't mention the past. Because when you finally earned control, real control, you don't use it to flex. You use it to fix what others broke trying to look smart. And so, I did what I've always done. I got to work. Only this time the rules weren't handed to me. I was writing them. It hit me when I stepped into the old logistics complex for the integration meeting. Same building, same hallway, different badge. This time, no one asked who I was. No one tried to escort me. I walked in confident, calm, not as an employee, but as the man responsible for absorbing what remained of the old network into something smarter, cleaner, and future-proof. There was a moment, brief, quiet, when I passed a wall where my photo used to hang. A 10 years of service. Plaque that disappeared the week after I was let go. Now there was a white patch where it had been. I smiled. Not because I missed it, but because I didn't need it anymore. In the operations room, a few of the junior staff recognized me. Eyes widened, posture straightened. One of them whispered, "Is that?" Another replied, "Yeah, that's him." But no one said it out loud because real respect doesn't require volume. We began the handover. I watched silently as Caleb's patchwork systems were mapped, dissected, and, politely, removed. The mess they tried to bury now lay under fluorescent lights, exposed line by line, error by error. I didn't blame. I didn't boast. I just pointed, explained, and solved. That was the win. Not a headline, not applause, just quiet correction. By the end of the week, my new team had migrated 80% of the infrastructure, on time, under budget, 0 data loss. The regional paper ran a small column about Arcland's breakthrough in supply chain consolidation. I didn't even read it. What mattered came later. A simple message from Emma. Saw the building. Today. Thought about all those nights you came home exhausted. I'm proud of you, Dad. You didn't just win. You outlasted them. She was right. I didn't burn bridges. I rebuilt the damn blueprint. And now, I was walking across it without needing anyone to hold the door open. I stayed 1 more year at Arclan, long enough to finish the integration, restructure operations, and handpick my successor, a sharp-minded, detail-obsessed analyst named Samira, mid-30s, quiet confidence, reminded me of me before the scars. Before I left, she asked why I never looked back at West Point. I smiled. Because I'm not trying to go back. I'm trying to leave something forward. Now, I teach 1 day a week at the local tech college. Systems, management, and ethical leadership. Small class, big conversations. I don't talk much about what happened. Not because I'm hiding it, because I don't need to relive it to prove I learned something from it. My goal now? To make sure the next Ethan Price doesn't waste 19 years waiting for validation. Value doesn't vanish just because it's no longer convenient. You don't need to shout your worth. Let time do it for you. It always does.